Try turning your microphone on, Mark. Hello. So before I rabbit on, I am very quickly going to introduce the panel. So first of all, I've got Nick from Carbury Coaching. Hello, Nick.
Hi, Mark. Evening, everyone.
Next, I'm delighted to welcome back Kay Woodburn from Gritty People / Gritty Athletes.
Hi, everyone.
And then last, but by no means least, we always introduce the motocross riders last. I don't know why that is. Hello, Tom. How are you?
Hi, guys. Very happy to be here.
Now, I've got a little video to show, but before I do, I'm just going to ask you very quickly to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves in 15 seconds, if you can. Let's start with you, Nick.
My name's Nick Carbury. I'm the owner of Carbury Coaching. And I'm a certified sleep performance coach, as well as doing sort of all-round sort of fitness coaching.
Fantastic. Kay?
Hi, I'm Kay Woodburn from Gritty People Athletes. I'm a performance mindset coach. I work with athletes across lots of different disciplines around how to strengthen and improve mental strength for performance.
Brilliant. And again, last but by no means least, Tom.
So I'm Tom Grimshaw. I'm a professional motocross rider racing the British Championship, race for Chambers Racing. But also alongside that, I have my own little personal training business. I run alongside it, TG Training 61. So that's basically me. Yeah.
Well, what a great panel. As I say, I'm going to play a very short 1-minute clip on why it's important to sleep. Well, hopefully we've got everyone's attention at this point. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Nick. Nick's very kindly put some slides together for us. Nick, over to you. Why do we sleep?
Basically, like it says there, the first point, sleep is our rest and repair. So essentially, sleep is essential for recovery, which in turn allows adaptation. So when we're looking at sort of training and riding and putting stress on our bodies, what we're looking to get out of that is adaptation. So unless we recover from that, we don't get results. So essentially, sleep equals recovery, which in turn follows adaptation, which equals results. Then secondly, a bit of a thought-provoking question, but are you winning or just competing? So like I'm sure Tom will link into this as being a pro rider and the difference between sort of making it to that level or just competing. And like no matter what age you are, whether you're a youth rider or an adult rider, depending on what your aim is, if your aim is to make it to be a professional level or just to sort of get the best results possible for you, if you are aiming to be a pro or get the best results possible, you almost need to assess what you're doing in and around your life, and sleep being a part of that. And if your goal is to sort of be a winner and make it to that level, it's really analyzing what you're doing, and I'm sure Mark will link into this as well, is like being a bit harsh, but sort of if you're sat late at night sort of playing video games or scrolling through social media, binge watching Netflix, those sorts of things, are those things really actually gonna lead you to achieve the goals that are going to get you to that level?
And I think as well, Nick, from speaking off air and with yourself, Kay, is that especially with the way you coach, Nick, is coaching is sleep, it's nutrition, it's physical fitness, it's mental, it's all one thing, right? If you're not doing all of those things correctly, then your performance is going to be affected.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, shall I move on to the next slide?
Yeah, I'm conscious. I don't want to be like a COVID sort of news briefing where it's saying next slide every sort of 5 minutes. But yeah, please next slide,
please.
So why do we sleep? The first point is it's a natural process. So we can break that down to individually for us as our body, but also we can expand on that into the natural world. And if we look at most organisms on the planet, they'll have some sort of sleep cycle, whether that's in a daily period like we do, or it might be a shorter, so like in an hourly period or across several days. And and when we start to look at it in that sort of context, we can look at how the sun works for our planet and sort of sun cycles, and look at what sort of global dysfunction there would be if the sunrise was late one day by 3 hours. So what effect that would have on the planet itself. So when you start to look at it like that, it's no different for your own body when you have a regular sleep and wake time. So if you're sort of jumping in and out of sort of waking times every day and sleep times, you're going to get the same sort of dysfunction on your sort of bodily level as the world would. So moving on from that, we have a 24-hour master clock, which is called a circadian rhythm, and I think Kay will sort of expand on that in a bit more depth. But that's sort of what controls our sleep sort of on that daily level. And then within that, we have a sleep drive and sleep pressure. So sleep drive is what drives that 24-hour master clock, the circadian rhythm, and sleep pressure is what we build up throughout the day when we're awake. That is sort of like the name suggests, it pressures us to sleep again. So we've got some influences on them. We've got napping, which really comes into the timing. And again, I think Kay is going to expand on that as we sort of go on. We've got health, so that covers sort of general health and overall health. So whether you've got any medical conditions, things like that. We've got exercise levels, so how active you are versus how inactive. We've got substances, so looking at things like caffeine, alcohol, any medication you might be on, energy drinks, training supplements, which are obviously going to be massive in sport, and certainly like energy drinks, for example, in motocross are massive. And then we've got environment as well, so just sort of all the things that are going on in your life in the sort of background. And then lastly, we've got hormonal balances. So we've got the body's chemical release of different hormones. So we've got hormones in the morning, so cortisol and adrenaline levels. So we can sort of look at, if you haven't watched the Body and Mind live that Mark and Kay and the guys did last week, Kay links into cortisol in that one, and cortisol is looking at a evolutionary standpoint. It's the body's fight or flight hormone. So how we've evolved over time to, if you think back to cavemen when we were waking up in caves, and the first response we would have when we wake up is, are we in a survival situation? Are we going to have to fight our way out of it, or are we going to have to flee from it? So that's why we get cortisol and adrenaline hormone spikes in the morning. And then nighttime hormones, we've got melatonin and adenosine levels. So those are levels those are hormones, that are going to build up throughout the day, along with your sleep pressure, that are going to sort of really push that sleep drive to fall asleep in the evenings.
You going to say it?
Yeah, next slide, please.
You sound just like Chris Whitty.
Thanks. I don't know if that was a compliment or not. So the importance of sleep. The first thing is it's our chance for daily recovery. So that's physical and mental. And what we have to think about sleep is the first thing that you get is the physical restoration from sleep. So when we don't get enough quantity sleep or enough quality sleep, it's always the mental side that is going to be lacking, and you're going to lose that sort of mental function for the next day, which, as I'm sure we'll all agree as a panel, and hopefully everyone sort of listening, that's very important to sports like motocross, where there's such a mental edge to it. And then so sleep takes up roughly 38% of our, or on average, I should say, 38% of our lives, which equates to around 26 years. So for anyone who sort of followed my content on Instagram, I sort of use this expression quite often, is that people sort of treat sleep as something that, yeah, I do it every day, I've got it covered, it's in the bag sort of thing, and they're quite blasé about it. But I think as riders, we tend to sort of zone in on like beasting ourselves for 5 days a week in the gym, and then like smashing out motors or races on the weekends. But actually we don't look at other areas of our fitness, and sort of like Mark expanded on it a little while ago. Like we need to look at nutrition as part of our fitness as well, and then expanding on from that, like people think even less about the sleep and sort of mental performance behind their fitness as well. So they think less of that than they do of nutrition, which in turn they don't think about enough compared to sort of the actual training or riding. And then, so we've got sleep playing a massive part of your optimal health. So when we get sleep right, that's really the link into optimal health, which then allows us to peak perform. Which, when you look at any sport that you're doing, if you consider yourself an athlete, then you need to be healthy to get that consistency level. If you haven't got that health level where you can train and ride, in our instance, as much as you want, then you're never going to get that level of consistency that's going to let you sort of get to that next level, that higher sort of performance. Then we've got hormone control. So a few sort of hormones there for you to look at for appetite. So when we look at hormone control from sleep, when it comes to appetite, we can sort of understand that lack of sleep lends into these hormones that allow us to sort of control our nutrition a bit more. So if you've, not that it lets you off the hook sort of thing, but it can relieve that guilt and that psychological side of things, that actually you had a bad day and you went off track with your nutrition. But actually, if your sleep isn't great the day before, then it actually minimizes your ability to make good choices in general, but also nutrition comes into that as well. So when we start understanding that side of it, we can start looking at how sleep sort of comes into every element of our life. And then just
sorry, go on, Nick. No, I thought you were breaking then. That was all. Go for it.
Yeah, just to finish up. So just improvements that we can get from that sort of proves how important sleep is, which I'm sure we'll all agree are key for motocross. So confidence, motivation, mood, energy, alertness, awareness, and then stress and anxiety management, which I think comes back to, like, again, I'm going to link that to something that Kay said on the Mind and Body Live, is like the body and brain connection that you get, and sort of once you start looking at how everything you do is connected to everything else that you do. So sleep lends into your overall fitness, and like I said about hormone control linking into your nutrition and sort of your ability to manage your stress and anxiety, which obviously is a key part of any sport, but especially motocross.
So, question on the screen. I think both Kay and Tom can help with this one. I struggle, and that's from Regan Jamie. I struggle with sleeping the night before a race. This is quite a common question that's coming up. So I picked Regan's one. I struggle with sleep the night before a race, and often that's nerves, because when it's racing the next day. So we know nerves is often a mental thing. So Kay, maybe you can come back on that one.
Yeah, I would love to, because I think it's a good one to choose, Mark. And thanks, Regan, for asking it, because it's I work with lots of athletes in motocross of all ages, all different levels of performance, and yeah, this is something lots of people find challenging. So there's a few things you can do, and of course, nerves like was already discussed, is something that is almost separate as well, because you've got that. There's other things you can do, because nerves is about the cortisol, etc. But can I rewind just for a minute, because I just want to go back, if that's all right, on what Nick was just talking about, because it's part of the answer to the question. So cortisol gets released in the morning as soon as we wake up, for the reasons Nick totally explained. When we were in caveman times, that's why we needed to survive. But we don't wake up now to lions chasing us. Well, most of us don't anyway, I don't think in the UK. So it's self-made threat. It's not real. But it's helpful because it wakes us up, right? So the cortisol wakes us up, and then we spend the day in a certain state. And later on, I'm going to talk about, like, if we've got time, I'll talk about the difference. There's 5 different states that our brain goes throughout the day. But let's say this cortisol gets released and it wakes us up, and it builds and builds and builds throughout the day. At a certain point in the day, that changes a little bit, because it's the daylight that's waking us up. So going back to Nick's example about cortisol, we didn't used to have electricity years and years ago. anyone who's still in school, you might have learnt this at school. Anyone out of school, you might remember it. We didn't used to have electricity. So we got woke up with daylight and we went to sleep with the dark. And that's the circadian rhythm part of it. You know, we woke up with the sun and then went to sleep when the sun is gone. But because we're in such an unnatural environment now, we don't have that. We have different types of lighting systems, etc. So it keeps us awake longer than is natural for our body. So so this brings me to melatonin, which Nick was just talking about. So melatonin, just think of it as like a sleep hormone. It's when we start to get tired. So the cortisol starts to drift away and melatonin starts to increase. Now, when that increases, that's when we're starting to feel a little bit tired, a little bit sleepy. And that's naturally what our bodies should be doing, because that's, you know, in a more natural form, that's what we're meant to do. Before electricity and all that good stuff, that is great, but can knock out our sleep system. So melatonin builds and builds throughout the day, and it's at its peak at around 9 o'clock, between 9 and 10. So about 10, and it's different in different people, of course, but around that time. And then melatonin is at its peak, and that's really when we should be going to sleep. Now, Regan, I don't know how old you are, or if you're old enough to have a phone, but one of the things that will help you, and there's pros and cons to this, I promise, and everybody listening, is turning your phone off about 30 to 60 minutes before sleep. And one of the reasons that's going to help you, because I know you're using the word nerves, and everybody probably will, but there are things that are going to, because basically, if you don't, cortisol stays high. I didn't say that back, did I? We block melatonin. So whereas melatonin helps us drop into sleep, something like the blue light from your phone will stop that hormone being produced, and therefore cortisol is still running. And if you remember, like Nick said from the other live, if you were on it, then, you know, we actually need to reduce that, because if we've got cortisol, we're in high alert, which means that we can't fall asleep. So that's one thing I would suggest, is turning your phone off about 30 to 60 minutes before you fall asleep. The second thing is getting yourself into a sleep routine, and start it now. So it's not something that should start before the night of the race. And I think a lot of athletes, in whatever discipline you're in, will have a great sleep routine, or try to, the night before. It really needs to start 2, 3, 4 weeks out. With all the athletes I work with, we're starting at 6 to 4 weeks out. And what that means is going to bed at a particular time, getting up at a particular time, and getting your body used to that circadian rhythm that Nick was talking about, so that it is easier to fall asleep. Your body is getting tired at the same time every day, and it's waking up at the same time every day. So that's the second thing I would suggest. And I'm going to give one more, because all great things come in threes, apparently. So I'm gonna give one more. And the other thing is, okay then, Kay, so I'm going to get in my sleep routine. I'm going to turn my phone off, but my mind's going crazy. Like, I'm thinking about the race, and I'm visualizing what could, or what might or might not happen. And to be honest, like, I work with athletes that go both ways. Some are super nervous and some are super excited, but it's still keeping you in like a high alert. It's called they're called beta waves. It's like when your brain is still too active to be able to fall asleep. So one of the things I would suggest with that is doing you can do these. I'm going to talk more about these a bit later on as well, but you can do these fantastic sleep recordings called Yoga Nidra. They're fantastic for all ages. You can get them on an app called Insights Timer, and it's Sleep Yoga Nidra. And what that does is just a recording, and basically the sounds within those recordings are set at what are called alpha and theta waves, basically when you're in a relaxed and calm state. Theta waves are when your body we call it the bridge. So it's the bridge between being awake and dropping into sleep. And then you've got delta waves, which is deep sleep. So basically they sit on different frequencies. So think of it like a radio channel, if that helps at all, if that analogy works. It's basically the waves within the sounds of the recording are gently dropping your body and your mind into sleep. Now, one of the ways I explained this on the previous live was when I talked about, for anyone who was on it, I talked about being in a lift. If you remember, I said, like, you're on a lift and you're on number 10 and you're dropping onto 0. That was just a different on the lift. So your brain and body is dropping into sleep. So Regan, just to summarize, there's 3 things. look after your mind. So, and for everybody listening, of course, who've asked this kind of a question, your body naturally knows what to do. So modern technology gets in the way. So remove that and your body will do what it needs to do. So just help it out a bit. Turn your phone off 30 to 60 minutes before. Getting your sleep routine now, it's worth it. It takes about 30 days to create a habit. So if you can start doing it now, within 30 days, you'll just be dropping off to sleep without effort. And like I say, if there's a bit of extra cortisol in your body, so you're a bit anxious night before the race, help yourself out by using these recordings like that I've just said, and that tune into the different alpha and beta waves and theta waves in your brain, and it will just drop you into a nice relaxed sleep. And again, I would start to use them now, not on the night before a race day, so your brain's really well attuned to them. And play around. If you use one and you don't like it, use a different app or use a different recording, because there'll be one that works perfectly for you.
Brilliant. That's a fantastic response. I just want to pick up on one thing there, Kay, because quite a few people are asking this question, and I am going to come to you, Tom. Quite a few people are saying, how much sleep should I get on the night before a race? And what you've said there is actually you need to get into a routine long before the night of a race, just to clarify that. Yeah,
this is another fantastic question. So if I was a nutritionalist, I know you've got a nutritionist on the next one, yeah. Mark, but I'm going to guess it's going to say don't start hydrating the night before. Absolutely. Hydrate well before, and it's the same advice in terms of your mind. So get good sleep in on the run up. Actually sleep. So this is the great bit, Regan, and anyone else asking the question. So I told you there was a pro and a con here. Turn your phone off before bed, but also for the parents, if we've got parents, let them sleep. Let them sleep. A child's brain, especially between the age of around 6 and 17, is not fully developed. And the way in which it fully develops and increases performance, talking about sports, but actually just as a child developing the brain, is through sleep. So on race day, if they can sleep in a bit in the morning and then they do more after the race or something like that, that extra hour will make all the difference. I mean, we know that even like a 20-minute nap will improve alertness by 100%. So all the research that I've done and I have is based on elite athletes, Olympic athletes, etc. So there's been a huge amount of research done. I mean, so it's worth it for the parents. Yes, get the phone switched off 60 minutes before, but if you can, let them sleep longer in the morning, and that will help too in terms of performance.
There you go, kids. When you don't get up in the morning, say that lady on the live chat said I could sleep in. Tom, let's come to you. You've just done La Chapelle, you've just done Hawkstone, first couple of races of the season. I'm sure the nerves are jangling a bit. What's your routine for getting to sleep?
Yeah, just really, really, really good comments from everyone, and I can totally relate to the question. As I've done a lot of big races recently, and over my racing time, where the night before I'm thinking about all the what ifs and stuff like that. Think about what's going to happen in the race, what I'm going to do. But generally on race day, I can't wait to get to bed. I'm one of those because I hate the build up. I just want to wake up and just do it. I hate the build up the day before with all the talking. I just want to go to bed, wake up, and then do my thing. So generally I'm quite the opposite. I can't wait to get into bed. But the way I deal with my nerves and stuff like that, I do, but I picture positive thoughts. So I don't think about, what if this happens and stuff like that. I just think about what I'm going to do. And generally that really just ticks over my brain and I fall asleep quite easily. There's a few things I help with that. I refuse to because obviously I've only got a small van, so my dad sleeps with me and my mum as well. But I refuse to sleep with my dad because he's a loud snorer. So that's going to interrupt my sleep. It's little things like that. And but then generally what Kay was saying, what was so good was that at Hawkstone, we were just talking about it, there's no signal. So what was so good about that, because I'm quite, I'll admit it, I'm quite bad with being on my phone before I go to bed. But what was so good about Hawkstone, I had no signal. So I just left my phone and I literally, I genuinely thinking back now, that really did help with my sleep. So I'm going to try and make that into a routine of mine. So it was good bringing that up. But And then you were talking about like the natural instinct of waking up when we was cavemen with lines, like that instinct in us as I say my dad's a bit of a lion, let's just say that. So because I'll get the odd little nudge from him, oh, you're getting up now, and like I said, I like to maximize my sleep as much as I can in the morning because I know it's going to be a heavy day. And so no, it's just literally, so to summarize, I like to picture positive thoughts, what I'm going to do the next day, get to bed nice and early, like I say, put your phone down, no distractions, and then you'll be waking up ready to go, really.
Brilliant.
Mark, can I just add
Yeah.
some of the if it's all right, Tom, because it's really fascinating for me as well. You know, you've clearly got a really strong visual preference because we would in neuroscience we call it VE, visual external. So you can take a picture and it can influence the way you feel. And I just wanted to add, like for everybody, that you have no control over social media in the hour before you go to bed. So you don't know what you're going to see. So if you've got quite a strong visual preference, it will carry into your sleep. So if you watch something negative or watch something that puts you in a state that you'd rather not be in, I mean, Tom, you clearly are all over that and you're able to create it. But that's the other thing that can be a problem with being on your phone before bed because you have no control over what's being fed to your brain. So yeah.
Brilliant, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, I think I've mucked the slides up. Which one were we on for?
That one, yeah.
Yes.
Nick, you need to say it though, Nick.
And Tom, my sincere apologies. Kay WhatsApped me, said that the question was blocking you. So my sincere apologies for blocking you with the question.
That's fine. I haven't got
I will come back to some more questions in a minute because there are some interesting ones. But Nick, back to you. The floor is yours.
Yeah, well, just to build on what Kay said there about just quickly before getting back to the sort of presentation is, like we don't have any control about what we see on our phone, and it's something that I'd only worked into like sort of this time last year, and like my process now is like my phone is on charge in the kitchen when I'm asleep. My girlfriend's really bad for it, but she has to have her phone like available in case there's an emergency in the night. But it's been a struggle with her to get her to have it on charge the other side of the bedroom, so it's not right next to the bed. But it's a thing where for me, so I won't look at my phone for the last sort of 60 minutes before I go to sleep. I also won't look at it for the first 60 minutes when I get up because, like Kay said, you can't control what you're going to see. So whether you like it's social media or it's the news, if you wake up first thing, or like obviously this is about sleep, so before you go to sleep, that'll impact your sleep. But also in the morning, if you see something negative first thing when you wake up, that sets you on the wrong foot for the rest of the day. So sometimes it's just something for people to think of as well, especially like on ride days or race days, things just messing with your sort of mindset and your mentality. If you're seeing negative things, then that's going to sort of impact how you look at the day. Just thought that was potentially important to put in.
No, brilliant. No, thank you for that.
Cool. Should we? Do you want me to get back to the presentation?
Yeah. So the common mistakes with sleep, then, Nick.
Yeah. Cool. I think I didn't mention a couple of the stories from the last slide, but do you want me to skip over them, or?
Completely up to you. Go for it.
Well, just in brief, it was a couple of stories that there was an Australian and a German flag just in the bottom corner there, and it was just sort of reiterating the importance of sleep. That a couple of sort of environmental factors. So in Australia, for example, there's no chronic diseases amongst Indigenous Australian tribes. So you could look at that as like, is it down to their environment, their better routine, they're less stressed, like Kay said, they probably more so than sort of our modern Western society, their day is more structured around sort of sunrise and sunset. So is that a sort of factor? And then in Germany, there was a study they did with an insomnia patient, which insomnia being a clinical condition. So they took that patient away from their city environment, put them in a sort of countryside environment for 3 weeks, had them waking with the sunrise, sleeping with the sunset, and it actually cured their insomnia. So like that's how sort of powerful your sleep can be, but also the routines and sort of schedules that you set out for yourself.
Very interesting.
So yeah, common mistakes with sleep. So I've broken these down into 2 categories. So we've got controllable and uncontrollable. So what I mean by that is whether you can control them or not. So the first category, controllable. So generally, it's a lack of awareness of the importance of sleep, which kind of why we're doing this this live. But to put that in context, help with sleep is actually more widely Googled across the world than help with fat loss. So if you imagine how many people are in the world sort of looking to lose weight, there's even more people who are Googling how to improve their sleep. So there's obviously a massive lack of awareness out there. Then we've got caffeine and alcohol abuse. So caffeine is the most abused substance in the world. It has got some benefits, but they have to be timed correctly. But we're very much in a culture of sort of Starbucks or Costa first thing in the morning, where actually, I'm sure Kay will agree with me here, that like caffeine is actually a blocker for that natural cortisol in your body. So you're actually doing yourself a disservice by getting that first hit of caffeine sort of that early in the morning. And
the other thing, can I just add to that as well?
Yeah.
Green tea. Some people think green tea is better, but some green teas have got 4 times more caffeine in than a coffee bean, which is frustrating for me because, you know, like what they advertise in the supermarket, like it's super healthy, which I'm sure it is in other ways, but from a caffeine point of view, it's not a good replacement. So it's always worth reading the label for things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And then, yeah, just finishing up on that point, alcohol is the most abused, I'm going to put inverted commas, sleep aid in the world. So that's not saying, obviously, I imagine there's youths here who legally can't drink alcohol yet. But for any adults, I'm not saying like cut them out completely, but it's just getting that awareness of timings for when to have them and sort of limiting yourself as well. Then we've got environment. So that really comes into what you're setting your bedroom for. So like we sort of spoke about with social media and that, so your bedroom should really be for sleeping only. And that sort of comes into the psychological effect as well. So when you start associating that your bedroom is only for sleeping and not watching TV or scrolling through social media, playing video games, actually, when you're in that environment, you're sending signals to yourself that, okay, it's time to sleep now. So you'll actually find it easier to fall asleep when you sort of get into that environment.
Sorry, Nick. Also, on top of that, with like we're talking about environment, it's related to the motocross riders as well. It's difficult for like me. I know I find it a hard time going from my bed at home to my bed in my camper. You know what I mean? Because you hear a lot of these stories of Olympic athletes. They get transported with them their own mattress. You know what I mean? The mattress they sleep, because it's all to do with the quality of sleep and such. But obviously, I can't carry my mattress, and so I haven't got room for that. But it's
Kay's dying to come in here because I've spoke to Kay about this.
Yeah, I work with Olympic athletes, Tom. So
it's really interesting this.
It is true. There are some Olympic athletes that do have that level of attention, but not all of them though. So some Olympic, sometimes people will go to the actual hotel room and replace the mattress, the pillow, etc. But yeah, if it's all right to jump in, there are things you can do within that. So you can, and these do make a big difference. Take your pillow from home. I was looking at one of the stories of one of the athletes I worked with last year, who was traveling quite a lot, and he's walking around with his pillow in every picture. Like he had his pillow under his arm. So you know what? Take it with you. Take your pillow with you. You can do that. And if you can't take your pillow, take your pillowcase from home. These are little things, Tom, that make a really big difference. And because you're right, what if you're in a race van? What if you're in a camper on race day? So little things make a very subliminal and subconscious impact on your sleep. So take your pillow, take your pillowcase. If there's a certain air freshener that's used in your house, use that air freshener, even in the van. Because the scent will create a sense of psychological safety, a sense of warmth, and a sense of homeliness. It might be a candle or something like that. So does that make sense? So like anything that, even if you don't really notice it consciously, gives you a sense of home, which is recreating that environment that you would have in your bedroom at home. So there are little things that you can do to recreate it. I've just spent 7 weeks on and off out in Spain for pre-season, and anyone who went to our villa will know, and if anyone's listening they'll probably jump in and say, yeah, I mean, I took stuff from the actual house and put them on the walls and like made sure it felt like a replica of the house at home as much as possible because of the period of time of being out there. Does that make sense? So yeah, there are things you can do. And Nick, sorry if you've got more thoughts on that, but there are lots of things you can do, and it is just about creating that safe space where it feels like home, even if you're not at home, as much as possible.
I'm just going to bring a question in, which now that I know it cuts Tom off, I will then remove from the screen. Tom, you will definitely be able to help with this, and I've got an idea on this one as well.
Yeah.
So it's from Susan Moncrief, and any tips on reducing the stress around not being able to get to sleep the night before a race due to external noise in the paddock, which is out of your control? And Nick, this comes under your uncontrollable, so I thought it was good to bring in. I can tell you what I did with Jude here. You know the people that are at a race to party, and you know the people are at a race to race. Park with the people that are there to race, because those that are going to party will party. I don't know what your routine is, Tom, but that was our routine. We would park away from everyone.
Yeah, when we park up, I've got to park with the team I'm with, Chambers Racing.
They're a noisy bunch, that lot.
We're known to be the party tent in the paddock sometimes, if you know what I mean. So, but generally, it's what's so good is obviously I've got my own little camper and stuff. We park towards the back. But the big one in the motocross world is generators. Obviously, a lot of people have got big generators going, and I tell you, my dad doesn't take no nonsense. If you know what I mean, it's like if that thing's running past 9 o'clock or something, he's out there and saying, "Come on, like this sleep's important." If you know what I mean. So it's little things like that. And if we're pulling in, we'll have a good look around first where the generators are. And we put ourselves in a good little spot, and it's just eliminating those little factors that could just potentially disturb your sleep, really, and just minimize, so you set yourself up correctly for the next day. So no, definitely it's a tough one, because I know everyone's got their generators and you can't really control the paddock, because everyone's there to have a good time, but also there's the people there who've obviously got to do their work also. So it is definitely a difficult one, but just have all I recommend is when you get there, have a good scout around all the generators and how the people are, and just a guess at what they're going to be like, really. So
there you go. If you go into a field and there's the Chambers bus there, park the other side, park away from the Chambers bus, basically.
Keep going. Yeah.
Now, hopefully that answers your question. Sorry, Nick. Back to you.
No, that's all right. Again, I'm just going to expand on it from I try to be as concise as possible with this presentation, because as we all know, and I know you know, Mark, we could sit here for like 3 or 4 hours and I could prattle on about sleep and we still wouldn't have it covered. But like under environment, that sort of comes. So when you're away at the track, you can invest in noise cancelling ear defenders. And like not everyone has to do them, but like if you're a parent and it's important for your child to get that quality sleep, or if you're an adult and you're so for Tom, for yourself, like it comes back to that question on the first slide. Are you there to win? Are you there to are you wanting to hit that level? In which case, like a good set of noise cancelling ear defenders, probably talking about £30 to £50. I wouldn't go for like a cheap eBay or Amazon set for £10. Like, actually look at what a decent set is going to go for. But if that's going to make the difference between you getting a top 10 or getting a podium the next day, or your child getting a podium the next day because they've had that quality sleep, then surely that's as good of an investment as it is spending what I don't know, like £600 on an exhaust or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like so many people
if
invest.
You told a motocross dad to get an extra brake horsepower out of ear defenders, they'd buy them.
Yeah, exactly. But maybe I should market them. But
I won't mention names, but there is one person I know in the past and growing up hearing the story where he's in the World Championship now, and they actually went to the full extreme where they had this big camper built, and his room was soundproofed. They actually went for the full works. I'm not saying to the MX dads out there to go and soundproof your camper, but I'm saying
everyone's running out to buy egg boxes now, Tom.
Yeah. But I'm just saying this is some extent some people are going to, because generally they understand the importance of sleep. So that's extreme level, but at the same time it just tells you what sort of level people are going to get their sleep.
But it goes back to Nick's original point, isn't it? Are you there to win or not? It's really that simple. And you know, the way they're going to achieve that might be, you know, it could be ear defenders that they chose to soundproof the van, but it's because they're there to win.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick.
Yeah.
That's right, no problem. I know I'm conscious that I always want to expand on stuff, but so yeah, then after environment, we've got eating and drinking late. So I'm not sure whether the sort of nutritionist you've got coming on next week will go into that. It'd be quite interesting if he does, but the sort of timing for when you eat and drink, and sort of allowing your body that time to process or digest what you're putting into your body. Because if you look at, so the human body only has a certain amount of blood. So when we eat something or drink something, blood goes to our digestive tract to process it. So actually, if we eat too late, the blood that would normally be sort of going to various parts of our bodies and our brains, allowing us to get that rest and repair when we're asleep, it's tied up still digesting food. So that's cutting into our sleep time. Then we've got evening and wind down routines. So comes back to sort of what Kay was talking about before, and the sort of routines that you've got. And the biggest point I would say is across your sort of evening, or like that 30 to 60 minute wind down period, you want to be looking at going from a light to a darker environment, and then going from a warm to a cooler environment. So you want your bedroom to be darker and cooler. So from a point of view of an ideal sort of temperature range for your bedroom, sort of around 16 to 18 degrees Celsius is ideal. And like personally, I struggle to sleep most of the time without having a window open in the bedroom, which again, my girlfriend hates. I'm like a Nazi to her, basically. You can't have your phone in the bedroom, you gotta have the window open, all this other stuff. Don't wake me up when you get at 5 a.m.
I bet Valentine's Day was a blast, right?
Oh, she went to a hotel to get the night off. If she's watching, I'm sorry for making jokes on her. She's probably not.
Don't worry, you're in separate rooms from tonight, Nick, so that's fine.
Exactly, yeah. Best night's sleep I'll ever have. And then sort of coming on from that, we've got body temperature. So our body temperature has a rhythm throughout the day, much the same as our hormone levels and sort of sleep pressure and things like that. So our body temperature will rise through the morning, and then it'll dip around sort of midday. So for anyone who has that sort of energy dip that they feel around midday or early afternoon, that is because your body temperature is dipping. Then it'll rise again in the afternoon and then lower all evening. So that's why we want to have a sort of cooler bedroom environment, because our body is naturally going to try and be it's working, so your core temperature is lower during the night when you're asleep. And just quickly on that, we can look at sort of your hygiene sort of routines around body temperature as well. So not naming any names, but I've seen one of my biggest pet hates about social media is sort of misinformation going out. And I've seen other trainers putting information out there about sort of the best thing you can do to sort of wind down and relax before bed is have a cold shower. That's literally the worst thing you can do, because your body temperature is trying to lower. By having a cold shower, it's going to actually spike your body temperature, and it's also going to stimulate sort of every sort of muscle in your body. It's going to stimulate your brain, so it's going to wake you up and also try and raise your body temperature. So if you're looking at sort of stimulating yourself in the morning, cold shower is ideal. In the evening before bed, sort of warm shower for settling down. And then from a light exposure, again, coming back to Kay's point about like artificial light, and coming back to sort of our human evolution, we've evolved over thousands of years where the only light we had was the sun and the moon, and then man discovered firelight and candlelight, and we had that sort of light. But now we're in an age where we have artificial light sort of at our disposal at any time. And so for how we've evolved, we've actually had midnight, which would have been the middle of the night, and now actually that's a bedtime for some people, or not even if you're going to bed in the early hours of the morning. So it just comes back to linking to that cycle that comes in with the sun, how out of sync we can be. And the more you can get in sync with the light of the day, the more healthy, and from that the more optimally you're going to be to perform. And then excuse me, sorry. And then stress, and looking at that there's so many different categories of stress we've got. So we've got physical, as in like the battering we put on our body when we train and ride. Then we've got mental, emotional, financial stress, sort of personal expectations, or expectations that other people put on us. And the body can only handle so much stress before it's just gonna give, basically. So it's important to sort of manage that. And like I said on sort of the importance of sleep, good sleep can help you manage that sort of level. And then from an uncontrollable side of things, we've got sleep disorders. So roughly 20% of the population suffer from a sleep disorder. So someone like myself wouldn't be able to help them. They'd need to be referred to a medical practitioner. For the remaining 80% of the population, they might suffer from disordered sleep. Whereby what I mean by that is they're just out of sort of routine, and they just need someone like myself to sort of coach them on getting into the routine, like we talked about, light and timings and things like that. And then another uncontrollable factor is medical conditions as well. So as you can see, there's a couple that could be out of your control, but the vast majority of common mistakes with sleep you could readily control yourself. And then just finally, just a little note for everyone. Only just under 4% of the population can function effectively on less than 6 hours of sleep per night. So you've got a lot of these sort of entrepreneurs and sort of like world-renowned coaches out there saying that you can do it on minimal sleep. Unless genetically you're built to do it, you can't. You might feel fine after 6 hours sleep, but actually, if you're not lucky enough to be in that 4%, you're not going to peak perform on that sleep. So that's where it really comes into, like, you won't really know that unless you go down the avenue of genetic testing, which is something that I have done. So like for me personally, I know that I'm more inclined to wake up a little bit later, so around like sort of 7:30, and my performance isn't very good in the morning as opposed to in the afternoon. I really peak. So like for me, I know once I found that out, going off on a massive tangent, but that sort of alleviated the stress and guilt for me, why I've always been rubbish in qualifying, but I'm always really strong in Moto 2 and 3 on the day, because that sort of answered that question.
Okay, good.
So then the impact of sleep. So we've got a couple of timings, like Kay sort of talked about. So looking at children from the age of 6 upwards to sort of teenagers, we'd be looking at sort of around 8 or 9 hours, 8 or 9 to 11 hours of sleep per night.
Nick, I just want to interject there. That's a really, really common question that's come up lots and lots. How much sleep should I get? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to go off on a massive tangent here as well, but like the best piece of advice, I've worked with loads of coaches myself, like sleep being one of them. And one of the best bits of advice I got from someone I worked with was, when a coach gets asked the question, what do I need to do, or how much, like in this instance, how much sleep should I get? The best coaches will always answer, it depends, because literally it does. Like, it depends on the individual. Like those are generic numbers. So for like children and teenagers, it's a bit more than adults, because like Kay said, you're still mentally developing, still physically developing, whereas adults, generally it's around 7 to 9 hours per night, sorry. And then as you get older, so elderly people will have even less, will need even less sleep, but it's still general. So like for myself, I'm pretty good for 7.5 hours sleep, but someone might need sort of 9 hours.
Can I add to that, Nick? Because I think just to build on that, it depends for me, is we generally walk around in our heads a lot. And we have got two brains. We've got one in our head and we've got one in our stomach. We've got microbiota in the stomach. We've got this nerve called the vagus nerve. It's the biggest nerve in your body, and it's the only one that bridges your mind and your body. It's the literal bridge between mind-body connection. And that vagus nerve needs to be listened to. So I keep it brief, but I just want to say, I build on that. It depends for me would be listen to your body. If your body is tired, go to sleep. If try not to override it with thought and think, oh no, because I've got this to do and it's not right. And I hear people saying, oh, it's wrong to sleep during the day. I am a serial napper. If I'm working from home, I'm in bed for 30 minutes every afternoon, and I have no shame around that whatsoever, because I know that's what my body wants. So I'm going to go and give it what it needs, and I'm going to perform better in the afternoon, whether that's in meetings as a coach or doing exercise. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, just be kind to yourself and listen to what your body's saying, because there is a genuine nerve, the biggest nerve in your body that is controlling most of your nervous system. It's literally talking to you, so listen to it, if that's all right to add.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So going off topic, but while we're on this, to expand a little bit, so Kay, for Tom, for example, pro rider doing 2 motos in a day, how would you say he's best to go about utilizing a nap during a day where he's got qualifying in the morning, then a moto, and then a second moto? So
for me, and again, I'll go with that line, Nick, everyone's different, but there is a good sleep routine. It depends on you. So if somebody who's quite nervous, let's say, for example, somebody who's quite nervous in qualifying is using more energy and they're just spending more energy than they need or want to. But once it's gone, it's gone. So they might have been burnt out a little bit even into race 1, 2, etc. So one of the things I would suggest, and again, I mentioned it about sleep yoga nidra. What I do with the athletes that I work with is I build them into actual going to sleep. So we start with sleep yoga nidra. Yoga nidra for 20 minutes is equivalent to 1 hour sleep. So if you can do, and again, I've told you where the apps are, and if anyone wants to messages, then do. But 20 minutes of that gives you 1 hour sleep. So it's very restorative. It's not actual sleep. It's dropping before sleep, so you don't actually go to sleep, but it restores your brain, your focus, your alertness by around. And actually, there's research that says it improves decision making by about 5%, which is obviously important when you're making quick decisions on the bike. So yeah, I would say yoga nidra in between races for 10 to 20 minutes is restorative. And doing that consistently around a race routine, eventually people will be able to just nap for 10 minutes between races. You're nervous, you can't sleep if you're too nervous, for example, if you're too hyped. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that that's what Tom would necessarily do, and it wouldn't work for all riders. But yeah, to restore energy, yoga nidra.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually have added that. I did do that last year, where I found not so much. It's to do. I know it sounds like an odd point, but obviously I find it quite easier to sleep when it's warmer weather in the summer, because obviously you've been out in the sun, etc. Like that. All you get naturally just a little bit more tired. But in the winter you're cold. You try and keep them going and stuff like that. So, but I know throughout the summer last year when I had big races in between Moto 1 and Moto 2, I used to do just have a nap in the back of my camper, just literally as long as I could, really. It just, because imagine my heart rate and everyone else's heart rate is so high for the whole day, like with nerves, and then actually when you're racing and stuff like that, generally when just to get that little nap, just to bring the heart rate down and just to calm everything situation down, re-energize yourself. I feel 10 times better when I wake up. So it's funny how you said that, and I have added that to my program, and I'm trying to do as much of it as possible, really.
Yeah, I just any athlete, but at an elite pro level, and especially doing competition week on week, I just think it's essential. I just want to add one thing. I know we need to move on, but 20 minutes just for everybody's awareness is optimal for those like nap times. Anything beyond that, especially beyond 30, but ideally keeping it at 20, you are better finishing the sleep cycle, and a sleep cycle lasts about 90 minutes, which obviously you haven't got in between races, because that if you wake someone up after the 30 minutes, they tend to have dropped into what's called delta waves, delta brain waves, and that means you're in deep sleep. And that's when people like go a jump, or they feel groggy or a bit disorientated. So if you are going to go at sleep or yoga nidra, I would recommend no more than 20 minutes is best generally for people.
Back to you, Nick.
Cool. So the next point has got no direct link to motocross, but it just sort of shows the sort of severity of the lack of sleep. So in the UK, the risk of obesity is increased by 23% if you get less than 5 hours sleep per night. And then it increases to 75% if you get less than 4 hours sleep per night. And that's regardless of nutrition. So your nutrition could be spot on and you've still got that extra risk if you get that sort of not enough or lack of sleep, essentially. So that's sort of the negative, shows a sort of the severity of the negative side. So just imagine that on the sort of opposite side of that is the good effect that you would have from getting the right amount of sleep and good quality. And then a couple of risks. So it's not written down on there, but actually if we get less than 5 hours of sleep per night, we're actually on the same level as being above, from a risk category, as being above the legal alcohol limit. So if you get less than 5 hours sleep, from a legal standpoint, if you went and drove, you'd be at the same risk level as someone who is over the legal limit. But then sort of for us looking at sport, the risks are sort of minimizing your cognitive function and reaction time. So from a riding and racing perspective, it's unsafe, but also it's going to lower your performance. And then sort of further negative effects. So you've got fatigue, which can be general, but also for your training and riding or racing. Brain fog, reduced creativity. So when you look at sort of like line choices or passing in a race, reduced immunity. So looking back at sort of that health and being consistent with your training and riding. We've got lack of motivation. So again, looking at sort of general cross training and or riding, racing. And then just generally underperforming. So that could be sport, that could be fitness, it could be work or school, it could be personally in life. And then just a final sort of note on the impact of lack of sleep. So for anyone who doesn't know, my background is from the Royal Marines. And so the training for that is 32 weeks long. And the physical and mental strain from the training and the sleep deprivation you get put through in that, they've done studies that show that it actually takes your body 2 years to recover from that sort of strain. So like looking at the health aspects of the impact of lack of sleep, for me personally, I'm now playing catch up for the rest of my life because of the impact of that lack of sleep that's knocked years off of my life. Like the TED Talk said at the beginning of this, how sleep impacts how you sort of naturally age. So that's another, like outside of sort of racing, is just the impact to your general health as well, which again comes back to how you perform.
Nick, I'm going to ask you to summarize the last two slides because we're a fraction over schedule. And as you said at the beginning, this is such a massive topic that we could do one of these every week and still not cover everything.
Yeah, exactly.
And I just want to try and get a few more questions in as well, if we can.
Yeah, no worries. Apologies to everyone watching.
No, not at all. It's a
through.
Massively in-depth subject. No apologies needed.
So yeah, how to improve your sleep. It's a cheesy photo, but it's a photo of Superman on the screen there. So if you've ever watched a Superman film where he's involved in a really heavy fight and he needs some quick energy and he flies up above the clouds to get direct sunlight, and it's exactly the same for us. Like the light is a free resource that is not going anywhere for our lifetime, fingers crossed. So use it. So light can help boost our performance, increase our energy and mood throughout the day. So like earlier on when I said about that dip in the afternoon. So if you're feeling that, go out and get some natural light. Obviously, if you work or you're in school, it might be a bit difficult. But and then it also helps regulate the body's clocks and rhythms. So like Kay sort of spoke about the circadian rhythm and things like that. Like light is the easiest and best way to sort of kick your circadian rhythm into the right sync for you. So then we've got movement. So looking at building that sleep pressure throughout the day. So even if you're on a rest day, it's still beneficial to go and do something light, whether that's a light walk or some yoga or mobility, something like that. And then just routine. So being really strict and disciplined with those timings of getting consistent wake times, consistent sleep times, doing your evening routines, morning routines, which I'll come on to in the next slide. And yeah, just building that consistency so that your body knows what's happening. And not to expand too much, but personally for me, my evening routine is now that the last sort of 30 minutes when I get into bed, I read for about 20 minutes and then I'll listen to some music. And very often I'm asleep before I finish reading for 20 minutes because my body's like, I'm laying in bed, which is where I do my sleep. I'm reading my book, which is what I do before I go to sleep. And I'm like, I'm out, lights out. So yeah, just to sort of kind of build a bit of personal background there on how important routines can be. Next slide. So to improve your performance, so like I said, this sort of comes back to morning routines a little bit, and it's a key method. So sort of most people get up and start their day and they use the excuse that they don't have time, whether that's for breakfast or doing anything like that. And it comes back to sort of making time for you, and it's sort of that psychological factor of coming back that it's not selfish to look after yourself. And like for kids watching and parents cutting them some break for their sort of morning routine, or whether you're an adult and you've got a family, and actually you'll perform so much better in your life if you do take that time. And then we also have to look at how our morning starts the night before, which is why it's so important to get that evening and wind down routine right, because it does link into how we sleep, but also how we feel when we wake up. So from the point of view of morning routine, there's 3 areas we can look at. Excuse me. So you can start to stimulate the brain. So whether that's a couple of options, things like brain training or reading or learning. And obviously, if you're, for me personally, involved in the business, I like to do like my learning or sort of reading in the morning, because it's good to get fired up and stimulated. Obviously, if you're going to school or something like that, you probably don't want to do learning first thing in the morning. So testing, like trial and error things that are sort of going to work for you. And sort of getting your brain stimulated first thing in the morning. Some movement to start off. So whether that's like a light walk or some mobility or yoga or something like that. And then fueling the body and brain as well. So we lose about 1 liter of water during sleep. So it's very important to rehydrate that 1 liter straight away. So you should be aiming to drink drink 1 liter in the first sort of 60 to 90 minutes when you first wake up. And the brain's actually around 75% water as well. So what happens is when you rehydrate that with that water, you're actually directly refueling your brain. So you're actually going to feel much better in yourself. But from a sort of mental cognitive function side of things as well, you're also going to sort of be able to function from that side of things a lot better. So looking at sort of racing or like qualifying, for instance, like it's important to get that done. But also, like we said, prepare the week. Like if you don't do it in the week and then you just drink 1 liter of water in the first hour on race day, you're probably just going to be running back and forth from the toilet. So it's getting those routines, which actually brings us nicely onto the next slide, Mark, which is the boring side of improving your sleep and performance. Much like the kid here in the photo who's bored of listening to my voice, it's just consistency. Like with sleep, with everything in your fitness. It's finding what works for you and doing it consistently as much as possible. And then, just next slide for so sort of in a nutshell, the summary, what we should be looking to do with sleep is compress the sleep time. So like I said, if you're only getting 6 hours of sleep, that's maybe not healthy for you unless you're in that sort of 4%. But if you're sort of, for an adult, for instance, if you're sleeping 9 hours a night, that's probably too much. So we could look at compressing that sleep time, but improving your overall sleep quality. And what that allows us to do is have more time because we're spending less time in bed. We get better sleep and then we have more energy through the day and we get better results.
Amazing. Nick, you and I sort of discovered each other. We were looking for a nutritionist, and you were recommended, and you and I started talking, and we were talking about sleep. And as I said to you, we played the video at the beginning. There's a guy, Matthew Walker, I believe. And for anyone watching the TED Talk on sleep, but there's also a book called Why We Sleep. And it is absolutely fascinating. And that got me hooked on sleep. So I'm going to ask you all now just to sort of summarize. I think what we're saying is routine is massively important here. Tom mentioned, he goes to sleep at a certain time, visualizes things, turns his phone off. So Nick, from your perspective, just as a kind of an overview and a summary before we go to a few questions and then we'll wrap it up, how would you summarize, how to get good sleep?
I think for the
that's
viewers,
a big question. Asking your answer,
sorry.
Right? Sorry.
I think the biggest bang for buck, to use that expression that's used in fitness a lot for people watching, would be cleaning up their sort of hygiene, for want of a better word, before they sleep. So looking at that 30 to 60 minutes, get off social media, stop sort of watching blue screens, things like that. Actually invest some time in yourself to find a routine that works for you. Like for me, it's reading a book and listening to relaxing music. That might not work for you. It might be something else. And then, I guess those things first thing in the morning that I sort of spoke about before, do something to stimulate your brain, do some sort of movement, and then just rehydrate. Like the one of the quickest wins that I get with clients when they come on board is hydration, and one of the things about that is rehydrating first thing in the morning, and they all report that they feel so much better for the rest of the morning and the day. And sorry, not to take up more time, but if you think however much water you should be drinking throughout the day, if you get a litre in the first 90 minutes, that alleviates the pressure for the rest of the day. So you can finish drinking your allocated water much sooner, and then it's not impacting it all links back in. It doesn't impact your sleep because you're not getting up to go to the toilet through the night.
Nick, sorry, one thing I should have said, give yourselves a plug. Where can people find you if they want more information and they want to work with you? Where can they find you?
Just on social media. Instagram's probably the easiest, but I'm Carbury Coaching on Instagram and Facebook.
Brilliant. Kay, for yourself, please. Again, where can people find you? How do you summarize what we've talked about today?
Yeah, I'd agree with everything Nick said. And so I'm going to take a different angle of summarization. Listen to your body. Be kind to yourself, because it's not selfish to sleep, right? It's a necessity. And I always talk about teaching people how to breathe, which is almost ironic when I talk about, there's different ways to breathe. There are different ways to sleep too, So just pay attention to your sleeping patterns. It's worth spending the time doing it. It doesn't take very long, and if you pay attention, you'll very quickly notice when you've got energy and when you haven't in relation to sleep. So bring your awareness to it, and you'll notice a lot more maybe than you are now about what works for you and what doesn't.
And again, last but no means least, Tom.
Yeah, it's very hard to go to disagree with anything that previous said. I work towards a routine 100%. If I'm out that routine, I do tend to struggle. So I try my best to stay in that routine as much as possible. I know as soon as I'm waking up, I know what I'm doing first thing in the morning. I know what I'm doing in the afternoon, and I know what I'm doing in the evening, based around training wise, what I'm talking really, and with my work as well. So any word of advice, find a routine for you for daily life and on race day that's going to work for you, and just keep going with it, because I think routine's the quickest way to succeed, really, because when you're out that routine, you'll think about other different stuff or dealing with other little problems that have come up. And again, I'm just going to say, get into a routine and stay in it. Try your best to stay in it.
Listen, guys, thank you all very, very much. Just before we finish, I just want to say, part of the reason we're doing these panel debates, and you guys have all spoke about this tonight, is lots of people have motocross coaching, and that's massively important, right? You need a coach to teach you to go around corners faster, how to do whoops, and so on and so forth. I think what we're trying to do through the foundation is get people to understand that that's one aspect of it. You need to sleep well, you need to eat well, you need to train your mind, train your body, and have your motocross coach as well. All of those things are pieces in the jigsaw. So firstly, Nick, thank you very, very much. You put a lot of work into it. It is a massive topic. So thank you for summarizing it, and thank you for bringing it across in a format that even I could understand. I really appreciate that. Kay, great to see you again. Thank you so much. Tom, brilliant. Good luck at Matterley this weekend. We'll see you there. We'll be selling umbrellas. They're going to need them.
Yeah. No,
our next live show is next Tuesday night. We've got a nutritionist, Kevin Maguire, and Jay Haig. They're going to be talking to me about nutrition. If you've enjoyed tonight, go over to the website, donate a tenner. There's a donate button on our donate page. Thank you all very, very. Oh, just one last thing. In about an hour's time, I'm going to delete this off Facebook, and then I'm going to put it onto the foundation website, because Mark Zuckerberg doesn't need the traffic, but I do. So if Kay and Tom, there are any questions you want to answer, you've got about an hour to answer them, if that's all right. And Nick, yourself.
I missed the slot last week. I'm going to do it now.
Yeah, sorry. I've learned to warn you as well. Those of you who are watching, thanks for watching. If you want to contact these guys, contact them on social media. There's so much more they can be telling you around this topic. We've scratched the surface in an hour and 15 minutes. Thank you all so much for watching.
Thank you.